First of all, you need to have structures in place that let you know how you personally, but also your team is doing.
Really check in with yourself and ask yourself, what do I really need?
And based on that, then you can start running in the right direction or just chill because you're doing well.
So, welcome to this third episode already of To Be Discussed. And for the very first time, we have two guests here in the BRYCK Tower with us. And both of them are here because they are speakers today at our community event Growing, which is happening later. And now we're really excited to have them here in the talk with us for To Be Discussed and to talk about a topic that concerns a lot of founders, which is mental health. So welcome Natascha and Gerjet to the interview. First of all, for the audience to get to know you, we would like to know who you are and what do you do. Natascha, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having us. We are really happy to be here. I'm Natascha. I'm a health psychologist from background and specialized in health tech and health innovation, and working closely together with many startup founders and also corporate partners and investors. Now I realized when it comes to failure or success, it's mostly about people, all the time about people. And at the same time, it's in our community, it's not a big deal to empower those people, at least when it comes to personal well-being and mental health. And it's more about getting most out of everything and everyone and setting unrealistic goals to an extent where we exploit ourselves. And this is what I thought needs to change. Also, when reflecting, if I want to become a founder myself for a scalable business, a VC-backed business, and then talking to peers and investor friends telling me that they wouldn't even know if they could recommend to start one of those businesses due to this high amount of stress and workload. So that's why we started Accelerate Health.
Perfect. So next, you, Gerjet.
My name is Gerjet. I am a serial founder. I started a VC-backed company in 2018 with the goal to make yoga more accessible to men just before the pandemic hit. And with this experience of rolling really all the way up and down in the startup roller coaster, I learned a lot about the beauties of being a founder, being an entrepreneur, but also about the pitfalls and the risks, and experienced a lot of stress and founder burnout myself. That was kind of the foundation for me to say, okay, something needs to change. And besides that, I've always been very driven to work in the topic of mental health and health in general. I've, the last 3 years, was the co-host of a podcast called the Wake Up, Wind Down podcast we do with Spotify. Every day we do 5-minute meditation, and I teach breathwork as a breathwork therapist in Berlin, and do a lot of movement things. But somehow I realized, a lot of things are developing. As a founder myself, despite having all this knowledge, I really struggled to put into practice. And when our business started to shake and was not clear how to continue this VC-backed track, I took way too long to understand, this is not good at all for me anymore. I need to get out of this. And I really woke up one morning and realized, okay, I don't want to work in this company anymore. I really fell out of love with a company I really loved 2-3 years ago. And it took a long time for me to kind of process this whole thing, leave the company, and now to something that I feel more connected to, and it being in a state where I feel like I can also drive things forward, not just based on expectations and stress, run from one topic to the next one, without really being productive or enjoying any of it. So, and since I'm not the only one, but a big part of the startup community is struggling, doesn't know how to talk about it, doesn't know what to do about it, we together started Accelerate Health, and now try to, on a systemic level, drive this change with empowering founders, working with startup communities and accelerator programs to change what we teach and we give as support to early founders, and also with investors who understand it's not just the returns that should matter, but also how you deal with people, how you support them, and in the end, if you build good, long-lasting relationships, it also shows in the returns. So that's what we set out to do now with Accelerate Health.
Okay, so thanks so much for the introduction. So I kind of understood that it's also part of a personal experience you've made. So what have you learned in detail, and what is it that you would what you would do in another way now? What have you learned? Which are the techniques that you know now about that you would have used in the past when you were in the situation struggling with mental health as a founder?
Mm-hmm. I think for me the biggest takeaway afterwards was that I was absolutely lacking kind of ways to assess and check in on myself, which means there's very simple tools that if you have that in your calendar once a month with your co-founders or for yourself, check, okay, are you highly stressed right now? Is it already something that might lead you into burnout? Is it something you can do? Is it something you need to do something about? I think this was the key aspect afterwards that I realized, okay, especially in moments of high stress, I won't be able to notice that and take action unless I have some kind of tool that tells me, I don't know, I'm in the yellow or in the red zone. So that's very, very important. Now I do this every month for myself. And then second of all, chaos and crisis in startups is unavoidable, so you always need to be prepared for it. And especially in the times where you're doing well and where you have the capacity to do so, you need to set the foundation. So prevention, which means like the basic self-care principles, which by now, based on science, is absolutely not any rocket science. It's 5 things. It's sleep, it is nutrition, it is nutrients, it is movement, it is light, and it is relationships. These are the 5 things that we need to take care of ourselves every single day. And usually when we find ourselves in a bad place, and I find myself in a bad place, I first think, oh no, the world is going, I don't know, external reasons, like the company is terrible or I'm a bad person. And then I check in and say, okay, how have my last 3-4 days been? I usually come back to, okay, probably didn't sleep enough. Or it's, I don't know, 3 out of 4 times that's the answer. Or I haven't moved or haven't eaten properly the last 3 days. So just understanding how do I notice if I'm in a good or in a bad place, and then what are the first checks, the first principles to check, okay, have I taken care of myself properly the last days? And if not, what is the starting point? And then obviously larger projects or long-term projects, you need the right support system, understand how do you get help in moments of crisis, because they're hard to handle, and who are the right people to help you. That's for me probably the biggest change and takeaways for my personal journey.
Okay, very interesting, and thanks for sharing it. And during the preparation, I already found a figure that shocked me a little. It said that 72% of founders suffer from mental health problems. Mm-hmm. And can you put this in perspective for us? What does it mean? How can that be explained on the one hand, but also does this mean that founders are particularly affected of it?
Mm-hmm. First of all, it's really important to understand that it's not being a founder that produces this mental health problem, but instead it's also the personality traits and the predispositions that lead to the decision to become a founder. So, most of the founders, for example, they experience emotions to the extreme, so the high highs and low lows, and this enables also them to do things that other people could not do under normal circumstances. And at the same time, of course, our environment and the startup community reinforces these tendencies and provokes more risks than actually opportunities. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's exactly the combination of personality traits and some even neuro differences. On the other hand, it is a high risk, high stress environment that we're entering. We have a very high chance of failure, so there's very, very, very large uncertainties, which is always difficult for our mental health to handle. If you make a plan, we have to change it 10 times. It is stressful. In general, it mostly requires you to work more than an average job, so the workload is higher, the work-life balance is usually worse unless you are really on top of it. And then there's a lot of pressure. So pressure to perform. A lot of the people that decide to become founders have a very strong tendency to be hard on themselves if they fail. So they have a really, really strong drive to perform, to show everyone that they're good at what they do. But also investors are not the people usually, until now, that would tell me, oh yeah, if you're struggling, take it easy, take a step back. But right now, I've experienced it myself, where I'm saying, okay, cool, yeah, then this is the moment to man up and really be a leader and drive, which on the one hand is true, on the other hand, there's moments where you need support from others, and that a lot of times doesn't exist yet in the way that it does in other fields.
Okay. We already had that high workloads and stress. That is something, everyone who already worked in a startup has probably recognized it. It's omnipresent, let's say. But how can you then make the differentiate between a normal amount of stress and anxiety and really an issue that requires professional help? Let's say burnout or mental health problems, struggling. When is it still a normal amount, and when is it over the top? Because high workload stress is just the daily business. So when is it something that you really need to take care of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first of all, it's not only the end state, but it's more a process. So it's really, really important to detect the early warning signs. And even if I experience some sort of stress, it could be an indicator that I should proactively do something about it, instead of telling myself, oh, this is no case of burnout now, so I don't need to engage in any sort of self-care practice. So that's why I think it's really important not to really just distinguish between these two sorts of stress or stress level, but also see that it's most important to, on a continuous level, to engage in self-care practice instead of just intervening before it's too late. And there's, for example, the model with 12 different stages. Do you want to explain?
So I think, one of the big things we want to change in the understanding of what is a burnout is, stress and burnout, they're not separate entities, but chronic long-term stress, based usually on the definition at the moment, based on work, will lead you at some point towards the burnout. On the other hand, now there's a lot of people say I'm burnt out because they had 3 hard days of work, and there's some people who say, no, I'm not burnt out, although they're not even able to get out of bed in the morning anymore. And what I really like is one model of a guy called Freudenberger, a psychologist, who said burnout has 12 different stages, and it starts with a certain personality traits of really the strong drive to prove ourselves, and leads over slowly ignoring our basic needs, like, as I said earlier, we're not sleeping enough, we're not eating properly anymore, and then at some point founders are really good at telling themselves okay, so far I've just been lazy, they revise their value system, say, I just need to push a bit harder, and then that's the way that will lead me to success. And over time, at some point, you'll come to what's called a clinical burnout, which usually goes along with anxiety, panic attacks, with depression, which is terrible. It takes months, sometimes years to recover from. But the way there, and understanding what are these different stages, for me, how do they feel? What happens if I have experienced chronic stress for a week or 2 or 3 weeks and have slept terribly? I can always get out of it by taking a bit of a rest, come back to my basic, the first principles, like sleeping enough, eating properly, moving, light, and investing in relationships to get out of it. So I think it's important for us that we kind of change our understanding of what is a burnout. Burnout goes through phases, and there's different moments where you can, best case scenario, jump off the train and recover, and not take months or years to recover fully.
Let's talk about the prevention as to prevent a situation in which this state, the end stage, the burnout stage. Let's say like this. Is this the worst thing, the worst case scenario? So to prevent this from happening, you mentioned 5 things, right? It were 5 things. Do I have to set myself strict rules then? For example, when it comes to nutrition, for sleep, etc., or is it more like considering it at all, or do I really need to set myself strict rules there in these fields?
First of all, it should not be an additional task. And since, especially with founders, they try to perform on every field, it should not be an additional field of performing, but instead it should be a relief, and it's something that supports all other tasks that I need to do. And it's really taking care of your basic needs, of course, like sleep, proper diet, taking breaks, and also doing sports. But at the same time, it's also creating space to become aware of my own feelings. And this is mostly a problem because if I have such a time schedule which leaves no space to even become aware of how am I feeling, this will be difficult to detect early warning signs. So it's about creating space, for example, for journaling, but also to schedule co-founder check-ins that are really not task-based or goal-based, but more like check-ins meant to understand how we're doing. Could also be meditation, of course, or coaching sessions.
Yeah, I think also we need to understand who we are as founders, and the moment something gets out of control for me, like I try to work even harder and do even more to kind of avoid something. So where does this lead me? The moment where I felt super stressed, I'm like, okay, I need a proper morning routine, and then it's okay, I need to do yoga in the morning. Breathwork is also good, meditation as well. All of a sudden I'm having this 2-hour morning routine set up, which stresses me out completely because my main stressor right now is to have too much on my plate and not having enough time to work, which is, the problem here is not that I'm not having a proper morning routine. Probably should have one in general because I know I have a stressful lifestyle, but I need to prioritize. I cannot do all the things that I apparently at the moment think that are important. So really finding a way of addressing the core issue at the moment, and at the same time coming back to best practices and finding ways to not see them as another task, but enjoy them. If someone doesn't like to do sports at all, that's bad. Obviously, it's would be helpful if you could just say, okay, I'll go to the gym every day for an hour, I go running for an hour. If you absolutely hate it, don't do it. Find something that you like. If you like meditating, cool. I have a lot of people say I cannot even sit still for 5 minutes, and then I start meditating, all this chatter comes up, and afterwards I feel terrible because I've absolutely failed at meditating. Well, you cannot fail at meditating, you can just feel bad about meditating. It is even just as crucial, if not even more important nowadays, when it comes to all kind of intervention plans and training plans, to find ways that are very accessible and that are fun. We want to not create more to-dos and stress, but rather find lightness. And I'm really good at overdoing things a lot of times. The right answer to many of these things, like, hey, I think what you need is to don't do anything for a moment, maybe give yourself a little bit of time, and very quickly you'll get to understand, or your body will send you messages, or your thoughts will come up that will help you make a smart decision and understand what's really going on.
And then also another point that I want to make is it's really important to understand that stress is an imbalance of a demand and a resource. So with respect to specific tasks, it's really helpful to identify what specific resource am I missing to successfully manage this task. It could be an ability, a skill, it could be time, it could be money, but it could also be social support. And really to look at all those tasks that I'm challenged with, and then to make sure that I have the resources available.
What is meant by social support? Is it like all the environment, like the community surrounding you? Is it like supporter network, or is it families, friends who's included in the social support system? Let's call it this.
Mm-hmm. Of course, it's really important also to have a private life and to take off, and but also to have an honest conversation with your co-founder team, with the people you work with, but also clearly know where do I want to set my boundaries, and are there specific topics that I don't want to address in specific roles, or do I want to open up and share my experience and also support others.
Yeah, I think also we know what the ideal state is. The reality at the moment, based on the startup snapshot from just last month, the biggest fundamental health study ever, shows that the people that are actually aware that they're super stressed, 80% of them talk to their spouses, their wives, their family and friends. I think 20-30% talk to their co-founders about it, and only very small percentage, I think 11%, talk to their investors. So the reality right now is a lot of the stress that is happening, you are bringing to the space of people who probably don't know your environment, cannot 100% understand the situation you're in, and definitely don't have most of the time don't have the skill set to give you really, really valid advice. I think what needs to change here is to have really support networks set up that is, on the one hand, knows the state of the art of how to deal with things. So there's like therapists, coaches, people that have a specific kind of training, and also that if you for a very long time bring all the stress from work back home, this will affect your relationships for sure. So it's good that you have someone to talk to, and I know a bunch of investors in the States who even say, always when I'm investing, I'll always need, if they have like the spouse of the founder, figure out, do they have a healthy relationship, is this person able to support them, because that is one of the key differentiators, whether people are able to maintain this high stress load or not. But the stigma is still really, really high at the moment for founders, especially in Europe. That's why we're also pushing the investors to say, hey, invest some money into the founders' mental health, provide them a coach, provide them a therapist if they need it, provide them peer-to-peer support groups. There's a bunch of things that you can do. You need to have space where you can openly talk about your fears vulnerably. On the other hand, you need to have spaces that are probably also free. You can just let work be work and enjoy your private life.
What is the reason that there's still this stigma, and why is it especially in Europe and not, for example, I think not in the US as far as I heard now?
It is still there.
It is still there, but it's not as extreme as here, right?
I think there's the studies showed it was 10% difference. It's just in Europe, it's apparently even less people are open about their feelings, their emotions, and even less people think it's okay to take a coach or therapist. I think it's like 23% of the founders only have this kind of support. Why is this such a stigma? I think in general our culture is still sees mental health problems different than physical problems. It's very okay if you have a broken leg, obviously you don't have to go to work. Potentially you might be even more fit to work than if you are in a deep depression or if you're burned out. Still, for ourselves, we're not able to accept that this is a disease, this is a disorder. So I think that on a societal level we have to develop, and on the other hand, the problem is the moment that you're super stressed and burned out, you are in this narrative of, a lot of times, a lot of people are in this narrative of, okay, I just need to push myself a bit harder. It's not that bad, I just need to overcome this moment of fear, etc. And then you kind of completely directly feed into the problem that is, into the situation that has created your problem, which is probably not appreciating yourself enough, not taking enough time to rest, etc. And so your coping strategy is actually not helping you, and then this drives you down, further down the soul, and somehow we lack the understanding of, hey, taking a step back, getting another perspective for myself, and talking to someone else would probably help me more than sending out another 10 sales emails right now.
Yeah, and so I think it's also, as a startup founder, you're a problem solver, so you don't like to ask for support. Mm-hmm. So I think this is an additional factor that contributes to the stigma.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What role play like the outside? I mean, founders not only put a lot of pressure on themselves, but they also get it from the outside. And then we already heard that investors play a crucial role in this case. So what should we expect from investors with regard to ensuring founder mental health, and what can founders do to have a healthy relationship with their investor, or that strengthens and supports their mental health and their well-being?
Mm-hmm. It's about setting clear boundaries, and what also the studies show is that experienced founders perceive less stress. And I think one of the facts could also be a clear boundary setting. And at the end, I think it's about making tiny steps and starting with oneself. So as an investor, if I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself, so how could I then support the founder teams or my portfolio founders in taking care of themselves? So it's really about creating a work culture and a safe space where we can address experiences that come up without judgment, and then there's the chance to solve it together or to find a way and with supporting partners.
I always remember one founder who told me, I've been working with VCs for 10 years now and not a single one has ever asked me how I'm doing. And I think this is, in general, it's a problem for any kind of relationship. No relationship should be that way. So on the one hand, we work with investors to challenge a bit their views on who do you think you are as an investor and what do you think will build a strong relationship. In the end, we have the joint goal of making the startup successful and understanding that making the people who work there and who are in the beginning, it's the founders who are the startup, making them successful and give them what they need, which is a lot of times is support. It is like a conversation with an open heart and with open ears and empathetic conversations. That is what they need. Then as an investor, it should be in your interest also to do that. So first of all, you need to know how they are. And second of all, you need to build a relationship with them that allows them to open up really and ask for support in case they need it. So we, with investors also kind of internally work on, okay, let's challenge the way we've been doing our work. How far do we want to go in supporting? And where do we say, okay, this is a clear boundary because we're not a therapist. Why do we need external services? On the other hand, when it comes to founders, I always like the person in power who's usually the investors to take the first step. But if they don't, then you can also sit down with the investors saying, hey, somehow I would like to work more in team with you. What that means is I feel currently 100% safe yet to talk about these issues or these topics, or we have never talked about how we do on the personal level. Let's change the way we check in. I would like to always start with the 5 minutes check in on how we do on the personal level before we dive into the business topics. Maybe we've also heard about investors who start their check-ins with meditation now to just everyone calm down and give them a bit more of a safe feeling of, okay, let's start opening up a bit more reasonably. And then it is trial and error, taking baby steps, as Natascha said, being yourself, good and connected to with your healthcare practice, and then kind of as a role model in conversations and in these relationships also show the investors, hey, if we're taking care of each other, have the time and the service to take care of myself, your business, your investment will probably go better and the company will succeed.
And then on the other hand, founders are not only responsible for themselves, but they also have a team. So how can founders identify signs of mental health issues in their team regarding the co-founders, but also their other team members? And how can they support their employees or their co-founders in coping with them? What can they do there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same, like as I just told with investors, it's really also about starting with yourself and also realizing what working culture am I implementing here in my company? What does that mean for my employees? And also to have conversations that are not only task-oriented or goal-oriented, but then have a proper conversation also about on a personal level. And if you're asking how you're doing, then don't overstep kind of this opportunity to really exchange on a personal level by saying, okay, now let's talk about business 1 minute later. So really, schedule meetings for personal exchange. And of course, there are by now many tools, also digital tools that support you in assessing the well-being of your team.
Can you recommend any of those tools, or are there any best practices or something that you can tell us a little bit about it?
Always depends on the setting, I would say. For example, there's one thing that is the easiest way to start, which is a 2-minute burnout checkup developed by, just published by the Harvard Business Review. It's really just 2 minutes, you check in on the basic factors of risk factors for burnout, and then you get a clear understanding, okay, is there any of these areas where I'm completely out of control and at risk? If it comes to teams, this was actually developed by Google, which is called psychological safety assessment. They realized after years and years of trying to figure out what makes teams really innovative and successful, that the feeling of psychological safety is the main thing. Am I able to make mistakes? Am I treated fairly? Am I open to, is my team and my boss open to listen to my emotions, etc., etc.? So doing this assessment within your founder team, but also the larger organization is usually a good start, because then you figure out what areas are might still be problematic, not just for yourself. But in the end, I think also what Natascha said, you need to be a role model. If the founder, we always see this bit like you call this mental health washing, wellness washing. You basically spend 50 euros a week on a yoga class. Okay, everyone go to the yoga class at lunch break, and then you should be happy. And you're yourself completely stressed out and don't have any open ears or hearts to listen to what the real problems are that are going on. And then lastly, I think one of our experiences is that a lot of times the topics or the level we communicate on, co-founder of a company called Co-founder Clarity always says there's level 1 issues, level 2 issues. Level 1 issues are business topics. What do we need to get done? What are the challenges, what are the priorities for today? And the level 2 are the emotions sometimes. And then a lot of times, if we keep ignoring our emotions and the feelings and the uncertainties, we always communicate and get stuck on discussing unnecessary details, like, no, the branding, this color I don't like, and things that should not be the topic and should be discussed for half an hour or an hour. While the underlying reason is that we have not taken enough time to think on the deeper level. And that's why we always say, hey, there needs to be check-ins on a daily level, so stand-ups as people have, and these need to have a certain structure, but there needs to also be times where we talk about how we're feeling. How am I doing? How are you doing? How are we doing? How's this relationship going? And what do we need to release? What do we need to excel together? What do we need to resolve? And I think having these, on the one hand, like times boxed and planned, and on the other hand, knowing what resource, what tool to use when, from burnout assessments to psychological safety to perceived stress assessments, where you just see, okay, what is my stress level right now? This combination is really, really important and powerful.
And also, it can be helpful to ask for professional support, so invite coaches and experts, because what we see is that founders are not always the best leaders when it comes to managing big teams, which is totally okay. So, but then, you should just ask for support.
Many of them haven't experienced that in their life or career before, so it's also their first time to manage a big team, and so that's totally new role for them, right?
Yeah, I think this saying, I think what was it, Michael Seiber from the Y Combinator, who said, what we experience is a founder is going through all the steps that you do throughout the 30, 40 years of a career. If you go into a corporate, they have to go through them within like 3, 4, 5 years, learning how to lead yourself, learning how to lead others, learning how to build a strategy, a business plan, and then really become a proper leader. It's so hard. I know very few people who are really good at it, and it's really, really difficult and very seldom naturally comes to us. It is usually a skill that has to be trained your whole life. So accepting, understanding that you probably won't be the perfect leader, but that it comes with a certain responsibility, and it definitely comes with a certain responsibility to invest in your own personal growth, take care of your own shit before you are able to listen to other people's and are a good leader. I think this understanding from founder to CEO, there's a lot of deep inner work. This is necessary. And so far, a lot of times, I don't see this, especially in early stage founders who just have a good idea and a cool friend who they want to do something, try something out with. At some point, the responsibility they take on, especially the moment they raise capital and have a team, that needs to change.
You just mentioned role models.
Yeah.
So are there role models in the startup ecosystem, in the startup world, like founders who have really opened up and are like role models for other founders to deal with or to take care of mental health issues? Are there startups who have good strategies or techniques in use that someone can that we can learn from? Are there any examples that come to your mind?
I think my personal role model on this topic is Tim Ferriss. He, from like being total hustler and optimizing everything in the last 5 years, he completely turned around and very publicly shared his suicidal thoughts, experience with trauma, and his journey to healing, and how it is he's slowly releasing himself from thinking that success means as much money as possible, or getting a lot of attention, etc., or is like always hustling, working harder. And all his podcasts like are really, really inspiring, because over the last 10 years now, I think he's having one of 10 biggest podcasts in the world. He's really made a shift in taking his audience along with it. He at the moment, I think it's not leading a company, but the way I understand he's leading a small podcast team, etc. It's definitely an inspiration. When it comes to what companies do well, there's definitely some startups who do well. And some founders and CEOs who really, really value this. I think the most best practices though come from other fields, like companies like Google, who have invested money and have resources to do such things. And we can rather borrow things from there, and from a lot of the insights also now for co-founder conflicts, etc., and how to lead teams is coming from couple therapy. So. Yeah, which is really interesting. Of course, everything in the end are relationships, and if we know how to manage our relationship with our co-founder, if we know how to manage our relationship to our boss or our partner, in the end, it's not even that different. Another really good resource I really like is he's called the CEO coach of the Silicon Valley, which is Matt Moshari, and he has also talked a little about how he thought this is what he wanted, like being financially successful, and then took a hard left turn and realized now, okay, the only thing that I want to do is I want to be involved with the startup industry, but I don't want to be running businesses because it's too stressful for me myself. So now I just take shares as the main coach, and he's, for example, the name of the CEO of ChatGPT, but he's like coaching him at the moment, and he openly has all his startup coaching methodology available on Google Words and Docs and videos, and he's taking these rooms like, hey, coaching is very simple. This is what we do. This is what you should be doing to make sure you're doing well. He does cool things like the energy audit, where you basically for 2 weeks check every task, every slot you have in your appointment. You check, okay, afterwards, how did this give me energy, or did this take a lot of energy away from me? And if you over 2 weeks kind of find patterns, then you realize, okay, these are the things that I'm doing really well after. These are the people that I want to spend more time with. And now he's actually optimizing the workdays of the CEOs more based on that, because if they keep doing a lot of things they absolutely hate or are struggling with, very surely within a few months they'll probably not be doing well and will not be performing as they could. And these, I think, are my favorite resources now.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for sharing. There's a lot of tips for podcasts and for literature and studies and so on. And I think this is also really helpful for the audience to have a look at all this. Let's come for the end to another topic that I found in the preparation. And this is the difference between female founders and male founders when it comes to struggling with mental health. And we know here at BRYCK that female founders are heavily underrepresented, and that's why we started the Female Booster with our network partner Gründer Jens Ruhr. But so I found out that mental health is also a topic that is differently affecting gender. So how have you seen the mental health challenges faced by female founders differ from those faced by male founders? And what steps can we take to create a more supportive environment for all entrepreneurs, regardless of gender?
First of all, the main factor that contributes to the high stress level is fundraising for most of the founders. And still, there is no good access to investment for female founders, and so that's why fundraising puts an extreme amount of stress, especially on female founders. And then, of course, also linked to the role of a family member and becoming a mother and all these tasks and roles. It's really hard to compete with male founders and to handle all these roles at the same time. And then also I think it's about a lot about self-doubts, because most women maybe are more like critical about themselves. So it's also about dealing with rejections, because part of the fundraising process is to get rejected a lot of time, but trying it again. And this is also main stress, of course.
What can we do to overcome these problems that especially female founders are facing? Is it like, do we need more support for them especially? Is it about community network? What are the where can we start?
Yeah, it's also for investment teams. I think for the diversity of investment teams, that even if this changes, then that will lead to a change in decisions that are made for deal making, for example.
Yeah, I think in general, like the steps that you're taking, for example, right now, as we see all these, all these steps around female empowerment, it would be nice if there would be other ways, but we need a female quota in companies, we need this in politics. So I think this is a good starting point. Actively push and drive and kind of have the mission to say at least 50% of my investment committee, at least 50% of our accelerator program is filled with women. And because only if we have more women in the whole ecosystem, the women will be there to drive their own missions, needs, statements, and raise their hand if they feel like mistreated in a certain way. So I think there's certain ground rules, expectations, and problems that we face in the startup environment. On the other hand, we need not just the programs that support, but I think also in general just understand what are tools that we can use to prevent ourselves from falling into the same pitfalls. If I'm an investor, for example, so certain assessment tools or selection tools for founder teams where I can make sure that I'm not having any gender bias in it. Always have a female investor on the team that could potentially flag if they feel like, okay, we're investing 80% to men. What is the reason here? So I think on the one hand, understanding what are the problems, like becoming aware of that, thinking about what are potential risks of how you could fall into the same pitfalls and how can you avoid them, and third of all, just keep developing more female-oriented funds, more female-oriented accelerator programs. This group just needs more support, because at the moment it is still a lot harder for women in the end of their 20s, beginning of their 30s, where sometimes family planning and stuff like that will make it anyways more difficult. They need more support. They need more structures that make it actually easier for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, both of you, for all the insights sharing with us today. Thanks, Natascha and Gerjet.
Thank you.